Back before the internet, the first time we would see someone die was usually in a hospital. A grandparent succumbing to an illness, a loved one with a terminal condition, or if we were very unlucky, it was a family member with a rare disease. And if we ever saw two or more people die, it was years apart, decades even, giving us precious time to absorb, grieve, and compartmentalize. Time to realize how precious life is. Time to seek professional help or try to cope alone. Nowadays, in internet days, anyone who's gone snooping through the gutters online has seen someone die. A live leaks video, a 4chan GIF, a Facebook post that hasn't been reported yet. Friends who think they're being funny, sending you awful clips. Or a politically charged uncle linking you to a fake conspiracy video that features violent footage. The very thought that the first time we'll see someone die will be online. That's a phenomenon no other generation has had to deal with. The internet will also be the first place most of us will ever get radicalized by political rhetoric, or the first place we'll ever see someone get bullied into an anxiety disorder, or worse, into suicide. In short, the internet, especially social media, should come with warnings. Your computer should arrive with neon caution stickers, training seminars telling you what you're about to see, and a therapist to stand by your desk. So what if I told you there's a place where those exist? A company who understands how dangerous the internet is. A place that hires people to clean out the gutters of social media. An agency where the new hires have to sit through videos of brutal gang stabbings, racist commentary, drone strikes, online bullying, conspiracy rants, and oceans of nudity. What if I told you there are people who are trained to receive all of your internet anxiety for you professionally, to shield you from the worst the internet has to offer? And then I told you the training doesn't work. The professional therapy, the pay, the seminars, the warnings, they can't lessen the screen anxiety. What if I told you the human mind simply isn't built to handle what we've put online, to entertain us as a species? Hi, welcome to Facebook's content moderation team, the place where we prove once and for all that the screens we carry around are built for anxiety. You're listening to The Re-Engineered You. This is a podcast about self-empowerment and all the myths, lies, and misconceptions we tell ourselves. Then we use science and history to bust those myths and re-engineer a better you. I'm your host, Todd Laments, the extrovert.
And I'm the writer, researcher, and introvert, Joe Anthony, whose job it is to dig through the outer layer of no-dawn on the internet and get to the facts.
Last year, Netflix put out a documentary called The Social Dilemma, which is all about the designs, the purpose of social networks and social media data. Last year was also when Congress grilled Mark Zuckerberg, the Facebook CEO, for 4 hours on television. And although that hearing turned into a total train wreck, the results were pretty clear. We are living through the Wild West of social media. Except the Wild West migration was spurred on by the gold rush and folks with pickaxes looking to strike it rich. Whereas you and I, we are the gold that the internet companies are trying to strike it rich off of. Well, our data is a gold mine. And the more they can keep you online, the more money they rake in. So that's our subject for the next 2 episodes. In today's episode, part 1, we'll cover myths about social media engagement. Myths like Myth 1. Facebook and other social media companies provide a simple service, communication, In return, they sell ads. What's complicated about that? Myth 2. Social media is a marketplace of ideas, right? Surely the best and the truest ideas rise to the top. Not just the ideas being yelled the loudest or coming from the prettiest people. Myth 3. Regardless of how the ideas spread, the truth will win in the end, right? Because if facts are verifiable, there can only be one truth online, right? These are the myths for part 1. Myths about social media engagement. Then, in the next week's episode, we'll talk about the cost of that engagement, the cost in lives, and the cost in personal health.
So I'm going to look into the legality of playing that clip. Todd and I just re-listened to Zuckerberg testifying, and the question he got from Hatch was, how do you keep Facebook free how do you keep it as a free service?
We believe that we need to offer a service that everyone can afford, and we're committed to doing that.
Well, if so, how do you sustain a business model in which users don't pay for your service?
And everybody has seen that clip now of Zuckerberg just standing there, and he just blinks once, and then he says,
Senator, we run ads.
I see.
Famous clip.
Yeah, it's now just internet famous. But that clip is almost like the from the smarminess to the senator not understanding how Facebook works, and that the ads aren't like TV ads where you're advertising to a family blanket. You are advertising to a specific individual whose data you have monitored.
An albino who works as a program director, drives a Subaru, and lives on a certain neighborhood.
Right.
And graduated from high school in 1989.
Exactly. That disconnect in age, that disconnect in understanding how data and ads work, that clip is a perfect encapsulation of the next 2 episodes that we're going to cover.
This is an 80-year-old man, senator, who doesn't have a cell phone.
Right. So the narrative from this episode, Cognizant, this came from a Casey Newton article. I don't want you to think that we did the footwork on this. Please go to The Verge, the online magazine. Read the article called The Trauma Floor by Casey Newton. He went and interviewed people who worked at Cognizant, one of the many contractor groups who Facebook hires to do their moderation. It is a little graphic. You're going to read. We're only going to cover some of the points that Casey gets to. But it's incredible, and it really points out that none of us are immune to the ill effects of the internet. They literally are training people to deal with the PTSD they're about to see getting online. So Todd and I, for this episode, we want to get a job. I don't know how Todd feels about this, but every time we do an episode about college degrees or jobs or companies, I always want to apply to them. I'm sorry, but I need to make money, and this podcast. So we're going to get a job at Cognizant today. And Todd is going to walk me through how we're doing that and how much we're planning to get paid for seeing the worst the internet has to offer. So, Todd, we're going to get, I'm assuming, $40 an hour benefits and a company car, right? Because we're just seeing the worst humanity has to push towards us.
Well, we're starting out as Facebook Moderators, which is a great title. And it's a very successful tech company, one of the most successful in the world, worth billions and billions of dollars. So I think $40 is reasonable for a starting pay. Only 1,000 people have this position at Facebook. And when I first heard 1,000 people, Joe, I'm thinking, that's a lot of people. They shouldn't have any problems. But when you think about how big Facebook is, how many posts there are. So 1,000 people have the position on staff with the company. 15,000 are hired through an outside contractor.
Oh, wow.
So the outside contractor pays, guess what, Joe? Amazon, Walmart money. $15 an hour to start.
Okay.
Poverty.
All right. So already now we're gonna get into this, but right as this episode was done getting written, I saw a picture online at Facebook, and they had a poster on their wall, and it said, "Contractors are people too."
Right.
So there's a real difference between those 80 to 100K Facebook employees, the official employees, and the contractors we're talking about.
Yeah,
the contractors we're talking
Berman.
about. Yeah. Where do we work if we are contractors?
Okay. Well, one of the big centers is in Arizona. Now, it's extremely secretive. It's not advertised anywhere. You probably apply for a job there and not really know what it is yet. They sign a lot of non-disclosures because you're going to see more in a shift, 8 hours, of misery, humans at their worst, than you'd probably see in your whole lifetime.
Okay. So we can't talk about any of this, not even with our spouses.
No, you can't share any of the private data because they know everything about everyone. I have this friend, her name is Jessica from the gym, and she called me up one day, and she was just floored. She was upset. She could tell she was trembling in her voice. And she had just seen something online that said, instant messenger is recorded, and Facebook knows everything you say on that. And she asked me if this was true. And I said, without thinking, of course it's true. Every picture, every word. And she said, every picture.
Right.
And then she hung up. So, and I was thinking, what the hell did she post that she doesn't want everyone seeing?
Yeah, she's running to her computer, trying to hit the delete button.
Yeah, Jessica, what kind of pictures have you been sharing?
Right. To clarify, there's an episode of the podcast Reply All, and they go into great detail about what your phone records, because there's a lot of times where people think that their voice is being recorded by their phone, so they can have targeted ads go to them. Go check out that episode of Reply All. They basically break down that no, you're not being quote unquote spied on with audio, but anything you type into Facebook, any picture you drop in, anything you click,
or anything you look at a little too long, right?
Exactly. Things that you engage in for more than a couple seconds, videos that you scroll over and they play for a bit too long. Facebook has data on that.
Now, when you go into work as a moderator, after the training period, it looks pretty much like any office, Joe. You got a desk, you got some monitors, but this place is working in total chaos. It's mental health illness at its worst. It kind of reminds me of our Amazon episode about wage theft. People having unrealistic expectations for people working better than robots.
Okay.
The employees there for $15 an hour are being overworked, overwhelmed, and they're being micromanaged to having the point of having nervous breakdowns. The coping mechanisms are crazy. To get some dopamine high, people are having sex in the bathroom. People are outside smoking weed together. Both of those things sound kind of fun, by the way.
At least with Amazon, they're working with dull, boring things. They're packing cardboard boxes. This article is something else.
Okay, the training to get, onboarding is 3.5 weeks of watching extreme violent murders, pornography, racism, abuse of animals, abuse of kids. This is all to get us moderators calloused. This is $15 an hour, by the way. I can't help but think, Joe, that this would permanently scar anybody.
3 weeks of sitting in a boardroom, if they were showing me just regular slides, would be scarring for life, because that would just dull me out. 3 weeks of this would be insane.
It's very uncommon to go into the bathroom at one of these moderator centers, and the stalls will be full of people crying, bawling, trembling, shaking, because they're so traumatized by what they just saw. They finally, the load was too heavy on their shoulders, and they just went to the bathroom and had a breakdown.
Wow.
Now, I used to serve at my church on the security force, and what the security force at a big mega church, 3,000 or 4,000 people, is we have to watch the pastor and make sure no one tries to hurt them. We also look for active shooters that come into the church, so we're ready to take them down. So to get us ready in training, they had this FBI agent come in, and he was going to teach us about when there's shootings in public, active shooter things, and what you're supposed to do. So they showed us this video of companies where people came in, disgruntled employees, and shot people. And it wasn't real, but they acted it out like it was real. Now, I just thought, I've seen lots of violence on TV. I play a lot of video games. How bad could it be? When it doesn't have that music and the drama and stuff, it's horrifying.
Yeah.
And I still can't get those things out of my head just from that. Those weren't real. They were still acted out, but it wasn't like Hollywood. It was really, really cold, dark, and disturbing.
Watching something that isn't dramatized is chilling. I kind of want to start at the beginning of this, if you don't mind. Like, we're talking about getting hired on at Cognizant. So we're pretending that we're about to be onboarded for 3 weeks in one of these meeting rooms where they're going to show us evil, dark stuff. Why does this stuff get posted? Basically, our first myth that we're busting is, Facebook sells ads. What's so complicated about that? Well, we want to talk about how much engagement it takes to get those ads sold at the volume that they do. Like why are people posting shootings? Why are people posting nudity? Why are people posting violence? So do you want to talk about what gets people to post that crazy stuff?
Yeah, I think you just put up a disclaimer, a warning that this place is not for that, and people will just obey that.
Right. Facebook is for getting on and making fun of your uncle and his dry turkey dinner. It's for connecting with family and friends and stalking people from high school who have gotten fat since you guys took your prom photos.
Or checking into exes and see how happy their life is without you.
Exactly. My ex's life looks like a yogurt commercial, and why doesn't mine? So there was a graph that I found online, and this is Facebook's information. So, like, there were meetings, and you can read articles about this. We're gonna leave a link to TechCrunch. They talked about Facebook and their known borderline content. So, to start, when do we spend the most amount of time on Facebook? Could you spend 8 hours a day or 6 hours a day or 4 hours a day looking at exes, talking to your family and friends? Like, how long could you spend clicking like on baby pictures from friends?
I think most people do it when they're at work, for starters.
I think you're right.
I think my gas tank would probably be about an hour and 45. I'm not proud of that either.
I think you're probably pretty close to I'd say that's accurate, for me at least. Now, we are two middle-aged or above men, so our experience on Facebook is going to be different than, say, like a 14-year-old girl
who's on Instagram and posting every 10 seconds.
Right.
Every single trip in the car is a photo shoot.
And there's a lot of funny cat pictures out there to be found, especially if you're bored. So this isn't just an attack on Facebook. We are talking about social media in general and screen anxiety in general. But we're using Facebook's data because, they made it publicly available, basically. So there's a graph that they looked at, and they were trying to figure out, when do they get the most time out of people? They call it engagement. So
the peak hours, right?
Yeah, how many hours can you get someone to sit still and look at their computer and post funny cat pictures and chat online and talk to people? This graph from TechCrunch, basically what they found is that right before somebody gets, let's say, politically radicalized, right before they start posting stuff that will get them banned, that is the peak engagement. This graph looks like a hockey stick. Like it's across the board. It's in the middle. It's level. It starts going up as people start getting outraged. Like as people start becoming not just engaged, but like they start getting politically motivated. They start sort of like posting wild conspiracy theories, and they start posting maybe borderline racy stuff, and they start posting semi-violent stuff. And then as they get more and more engaged with political rhetoric, as they get more engaged with violence, as they get more engaged with like conspiracy theories, like flat earthing, that line goes skyrocketing until people are spending approximately 8 hours a day online on social media posting the wildest stuff you've ever seen because they think they have unlocked the secrets of the universe. And that's when your uncle starts talking about how we never landed on the moon and that all these conspiracy theories are true.
Well, they're testing the boundaries, and then they step over a little bit, and then it's anything goes.
Right. That dopamine kick goes up. You and I had an episode about grudges, and we talked about how news organizations run on moral outrage. If you can get someone hooked on moral outrage, if you can get somebody hooked on the fantasy that another tribe of people politically is wrong and that they just need to wake up and see how wrong they are, that's when you get the most engagement. That's when you get the most. That's addictive. That feeling of moral outrage is as addictive as being on a hard drug.
Well, it's funny you say that because Joe's trained me on this guy. So all my sports men and women out there who love watching ESPN all day, they do the same thing on that to us. All those sportscasters get on there and they have this really strong opinion. And then we get so outraged. We want to beat them down and say, they're wrong. That's not right. That's why we keep watching it.
Right.
And they probably don't even feel that way. They're just running the narrative to get us hooked.
Right, exactly. There's a YouTuber, Veritasium, and he runs a physics and science channel. But he did his, I believe it was his PhD study, was on how education works. And he talks about in one of his very early videos that if there is a disagreement, people are engaged more, they're engaged longer, and they pay more attention. So if Todd and I are having an argument about something, if one of us is clearly wrong and the other is clearly right, people listening you'll learn it faster. You'll also engage more. So if you're thinking, why do left and right news organizations spend so much time making the other side of the political aisle look like villains? Like why do they spend so much time saying those people are clearly wrong? They're morally they're against you.
There's no gray.
Right. They can't handle your way of life, and it's moral outrage. They know what they're doing. They don't actually believe what they're saying on news. But on social media, it works. There's nobody who needs to be held accountable. In real life, we can sort of out a news anchor by saying, hey, that person is not just wrong, but we can prove they're wrong. Sometimes they backpedal. On rare occasion, they lose their job. But if you look at this graph of Facebook engagement, nobody's there to tell these people that this information is bad, or that these conspiracy theories aren't good, or you can't cancel a random internet that floats your way through Facebook. So these content moderation teams, what they're facing is unprecedented levels of outrage and hatred and violence and nudity and the worst we have to offer online. They're getting the peak of that graph. They're getting the most hatred, the most engagement, the most sort of like grudge fetishization. So they're really getting the worst. Do you want to sort of get a little bit away from the extremist side of things? Just talk about what we actually engage with in social media. What keeps us hooked to the screen, basically?
Well, I was going to ask you about just the social tax of it. I've noticed myself doing this. If you like one of my pictures and comment, then I feel obligated to keep that your attention, so I do that for your pictures. Right.
Todd runs our Instagram and has sort of worked on social media for our podcast since the beginning. And something Todd's asked very early on was, how much is dependent on likes and star reviews. How much of our life is sort of ruled by the little dopamine kicks of people clicking like. And I think something, Todd, you brought up is, do attractive people do better on social media?
Sex sells, right, Joe?
Right. Well, I wanted to look into, is it sex or is it just being attractive? Because I had a theory about this. The old 1940s, 1950s ad campaigns, they really relied on almost like pin-up gal style sex sells. But we're starting to get into an age of research where we're looking into maybe it's not just sex. Maybe attractive facial features are more trustworthy.
Interesting. My first thing was yes. I think that everyone likes people who are good looking.
Right. I thought it was we want to trust people who we could potentially have sex with. But the study, I got a study from Cornell, and it talks about how it's not just sex. It's pretty people are easier to believe. So we've talked about the halo effect and a couple other psychological effects that kind of tweak our brains. I'm just going to read this part of this Cornell study. We'll have the link to it in our show notes. But it talks about how, consistent with ample research, it shows that in real life, beautiful people are more believed, more likable, and more considered more trustworthy, basically. Now, when you go shopping online and you want to look for someone to trust, do you trust a company or do you trust a person? Like if you're looking at reviews, like you and we're going to work at Cognizant. So if we go to like glassdoor.com and we're like, would you trust that company saying, come work for us?
No.
And
then sometimes I always would trust what the ex-employees would say. And then I always figure they might be exaggerating. But when I see these 5-star, this is the greatest place to live, place to work, I've never made so much money, I think this was a ringer they brought in.
Right. Yeah. If things are worded too well, I assume it might be a ringer. You and I are pretty much on the same page with this. I doubt anyone listening is going to be like, trust the company. Nobody's a shill out there, I don't think. But yeah, according to this report, 92% of online shoppers and reviewers, they trust people, they trust consumers, they trust the employees, and they're 23 times more likely to trust customer-generated content.
Like the restaurant reviews.
Right.
And for some reason, I don't know when this happened. It used to be if you told me about a great restaurant, I would go. Now, if you tell me about a great restaurant, I check the reviews and base more on that than what you just told me.
Oh, totally.
My friend who I eat out with all the time.
Yeah, me too. I would, even if you tell me a restaurant is great, I will still sort of on the side pull out my phone and just be like, what are the stars? They found in the study that gender didn't impact the attractiveness bias, but attractiveness in general was important. So they asked like 119 adults in crowdsourcing to evaluate the attractiveness of somebody, scale of 1 to 10, very simple. And then they asked people if they would trust a hotel review, if a hotel review is positively written. And when people were picking a hotel, if it was an attractive reviewer, even if there were negative reviews involved, like if they looked down the page and there were other negative reviews, but they were by nobody, like there's no picture, or if they were by ugly people, they trusted the attractive photos.
That's crazy. Remember that you taught me about, you did the research for another of our episodes, and you said if, let's say we're on the bus and someone really attractive sits next to us, and our defenses go up right away. Our guard goes up because we're afraid their smile, they're trying to con us. Why is it different online than it is in person?
Yeah, I remember that episode, and it was your cortisol spikes if you're comparing yourself to somebody attractive sitting next to you. I think when we're I think we're more apt to trust attractive people, but I think we view them as a threat when they're physically in our proximity. Now, I'm just guessing. I don't have a study team behind me, but it feels like that is, more accurate. If
Makes a lot of sense, though, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. It also makes me think how many trusted YouTube stars are young and attractive. Very rarely do I see like YouTube reviewers or YouTube stars who are like old and grizzled.
Like that senator.
Right, yeah. There's not a lot of hatches out there. I mean, there are exceptions, of course, but most YouTube stars are young and attractive.
Well, my favorite football player, Tom Brady, I watch all his interviews. I watch every play he does, sometimes over and over. I will buy things that he endorses, but if I saw him in person, I wouldn't walk up to him. I wouldn't feel comfortable.
Right. Speaking of reviews, I don't know if you know this, but our show gets star reviews on iTunes sometimes. Do you want to know how much that impacts business in the real world?
Yes, and listeners, feel free to leave one.
Yes.
They don't cost anything.
If you're listening to the sound of our voice, please leave us a iTunes review. We stopped asking for those at the end of shows at some point. I miss desperately holding our hat out, but does a star review negatively affect your business? This came from Harvard Business Review and Forbes. We'll include the link. But yes, a 1-star review. So a 1 star meaning 1 out of 5. So the lowest review you can give in Yelp. That can lead to a 5 to 9% change in revenue.
That doesn't seem fair over just what one person thinks.
Oh, it gets worse. So that's a one person thinks something bad, and it's weighed against an unequal amount of 5-star reviews. If you have 5-star reviews, that looks great. If you have a single 1-star review, it can change your revenue by 5 to 9%. According to the research, they also talked about how if you have an excess of 3 negative articles within search results. So somebody types in Cognizant, if we're going to get a job there, or they type in the re-engineered you. If there are 3 negative articles or more, we can expect to lose 59% of our business potentially.
Holy shit, over what 3 people think.
Exactly. It's not always. It really depends on what your business is, but it sure as heck counts. Now, the fake spot is something that people use for Amazon. This is not an ad for them, but there are services out there that can suss out what reviews are real and what reviews aren't. Which ones are being written by the company, which ones are being written by basically bots or people who are writing samey reviews for, pushing products over and over. If you have one loud negative reviewer who can get on, like, say, 3 different accounts, one person can effectively not tank your business, but they can start a decline if they really are motivated.
That should be against the law.
Yeah. Attacking your if we could prove it, that's something else. That's effectively, if somebody walks out your business and like gets 2 of their friends and they hold up signs, it doesn't feel like that would have as much of an effect as like really bad online reviews.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. A picket line would be better than having, a couple of really bad star reviews.
That's just entertainment now. People just honk their horn.
Right,
still go in there and
exactly.
buy whatever they have.
If we're talking about like being radicalized online, getting really grudgy online and getting angry, have you ever been won over by a conspiracy theory? Have you ever had one where you're like, that sounds true?
I don't think so. Have you?
Sort of. There are real conspiracy theories that have, like, every 70 years the government has to fess up. Like they put out documents every 70 years after the fact. One that I found was real. I got introduced to this by, I think, Adam Ruins Everything. Something called Jamaican ginger, where during the Prohibition, I think it was the Revenue Service was like mandating that grain alcohols that are used in tractors had like poisons in them. And it turned into this wild, like they ended up poisoning a bunch of alcoholics effectively. So I look at conspiracy theories, and if they require too much coordination, I think, the government couldn't do that. The government can barely hold together an investigation. But if it is something that kind of seems lazy, like I can see that happening because they didn't do their policy right, like Jamaican Ginger, I can start being swayed. I can totally see myself getting drawn into some of these conspiracy theories.
Yeah, if there's some truth to them, like their bridge, they didn't secure the bridge and it drowned the town. So they indirectly did it, but it wasn't out of malice.
Yes, exactly. I am totally, I'm not weak to conspiracy theories, but I can see myself being drawn into them.
I can see that too. You want them to be bad.
Right. How these, if we're trained to fortify ourselves against it, if we have this 3-week training as a shield and we're working at Cognizant, no way we fall for this stuff, right?
I would hope that we would be above it, smart guys like us. But now that we're moderators, that might change. We might start buying into the conspiracy. We might start believing in things that not that long ago, Joe, we would have bet our life on aren't true.
Okay. So we've literally had people in a boardroom tell us what you're about to see is all lies. It's all garbage. We're moderating it. You know it's not true.
You would think it's already been strained out that it's bad. That's why you're looking at it as a moderator. So we're sitting there in a moderator. We're seeing all the brutal, nasty things. But a lot of the stuff up on Facebook is just what you said, conspiracy theories. Now, after being exposed to these 8 hours a day, sometimes only for a week or so, a lot of these people, the moderators, have done a 180 on their views. And it's crazy stuff, Joe. Some people start believing the earth is flat.
Holy shit.
Yeah, this is some old school, right?
So it's not Jamaican Ginger or a bridge collapsed. It is like the craziest.
Absolutely. Another one, too, which is absolutely bizarre, insane, horrible. Some of them started to question certain aspects of the Holocaust.
Okay.
Now, the paranoia that these moderators start having, a lot of them start bringing guns to work. They're putting guns by their bedside. They're convinced that someone, like from the government conspiracy theory, is going to come in the middle of the night and kill them and their family.
Wow. Okay.
And this is an American company. These are Americans that work in this Arizona moderator office. A lot of people are starting to believe that 9/11 wasn't a terrorist attack.
Wow. I have a lot of mixed feelings about this. These are not dumb people. Like I know we keep hitting that button, but like these are people being trained to deal with the internet, and they are succumbing to. I remember when we read this article for the first time, there was a lot of like, it's not everybody. It's not like everybody in the office at Cognizant suddenly believes in this conspiracy theory. But they individually, just like one guy would just start thinking, like would start mentioning, he's like, I don't know if the Holocaust was real. Can you imagine being at a job where like you just slowly start seeing those cracks form? Like you just slowly start seeing like employees around you being like, is the earth not flat?
Well, that's what I think. I think they get callous. Like almost to me, it seems like they're reborn again. Like they're a toddler and they're getting all this information and they're just accepting it for what it is.
Yeah. We've had episodes that cover the mere exposure effect. It's the idea that your brain can't really differentiate sources. Like if you hear something once from a crazy person, you're like, well, that's nuts. If you hear it 7 times from 7 different sources, your brain starts thinking, well, everyone around me thinks this. Maybe they're right.
Not mere, M-E-R-E.
Yeah, as in like it merely takes 7 to 20 times.
Is that just how brainwashing works, right?
Oh, it completely is. Yeah, you surround yourself with people. I kind of want to get into truthfulness about a little bit. Like, why do we start believing in crazy stuff online? Why being online a lot makes it to where truth doesn't spread as fast. Have you ever wondered, I mean, like in our opening, in our myths, we talk about the truth will eventually win, that online truth is verifiable. There's Snopes. There are places where they can just say, this is true, this is not.
Yeah, it's black and white. I'm right, you're wrong.
Yeah, or that people can spread as many lies as they want into the ocean online, but eventually the rock solid bed underneath is truth. That, that's the part that's unmovable. Everything else just shifts around.
Said like a professional fiction writer.
Right. I like to believe that the truth is the bedrock, or the rock in the stream. But we're going to talk about Twitter's lie analysis, and this comes from Verge and Science Mag. And turns out both truth and lies are actually just bits floating around. Like they're more like the Pacific gyre, the trash floating in the ocean, than it is, a stream or a rock. So let's start with people who want to spread lies. Have you ever heard the phrase Gish Gallop?
Gish Gallop, no.
Okay. If you and I are in a high school debate and you were winning, say like you and I are debating on whether or not the earth is flat, if you tell me, okay, well actually let's do this. You make an argument for why the earth isn't flat.
Well, for starters, there's satellites that take pictures of the earth, so you can see it's not flat.
So the ships are sailing in a circle on a disk, and the satellites have curved lenses, so they can actually see things in a curve. And if you want to talk about it, light reflects in a curve too, so we can all prove that everything is observing things in a curve, but it's really flat. So
you're creating doubt. You're shooting down my facts.
I am. Well, what I'm actually, if I go faster than you in an argument, and I keep throwing out lies, it doesn't matter if they're provable or not. You gave me one fact that can verify that the earth is round. I gave you 3 lies just now, and each one of them delves into a different science, a different history, a different thing that would have to be proven. You would have to go start looking up on your computer, okay, here's how camera lenses work. So this is, what Joe said is bullshit.
But the speed and volume of it is just information overload.
Yeah, exactly. You would have to pull up 3 different articles to disprove all 3 of those things. So the Gish Gallop, this goes back to literally like high school debate. The Gish Gallop is bringing up in rapid succession vague claims, anecdotes, misinterpreted facts. If you are doing it well, you have half-truths sprinkled throughout your lies. That way it takes longer for people to prove untrue. There's a Quartz article where they talked about, we're not political on this podcast, but just from the standpoint of language and debate, Trump uses this as his main debate tactic. He tries to make it very difficult to verify or disprove anything he says. And that's something Quartz pointed out. If you want to go with a non-political source, this is basically how Gwyneth Paltrow's company, Goop, stays in business.
This reminds me of sales techniques. So in a sales technique, Joe, you tell your little spiel. It's only a minute. And then you give them a whole bunch of things that are your truths. And then when they say their objections, things that they disagree, you hit both of those with 2 points. And you're ready for them. So as soon as they say them, you go, boom, boom, the shotgun on them.
Right, exactly. You hit them with things they would have to take cognitive space to disprove. And in the end, like if you are practiced at this, you will spend less effort doing a Gish Gallop than they spend disproving you or even thinking of how to disprove you. Like you would mentally have to go through my argument and be like, okay, how do we disprove lenses being curved? That sounds, you like, what would we even look up to be like light reflects in or refracts in a circle? So like
you give up, you submit.
Yeah, exactly. Cognitively, your brain is just sort of wears itself out thinking of how you would even start that process. That's why journalists are sometimes superheroes for going through somebody's political debate and breaking it down point by point and disproving everything. Did you ever hear about Twitter's lie tree?
No. What's that?
Okay. Are you on Twitter much?
We are. The Re-Engineers on Twitter. Please follow us. All our episodes are on there. I don't put much post on there, but Twitter
has been accused of spreading lies. That it's easier to spread lies on Twitter, that politicians can spread lies easier. Trump was recently banned from Twitter.
Well, I remember towards the end of the election, they would put up this wasn't true. So people, they didn't like their opinion on things, they'd put up, this is not confirmed.
Yeah, this can't be confirmed. This may not be truthful.
Like a warning sticker.
Well, they did an analysis fairly recently, and we've got the link to it from Science Mag. They found out that basically they were looking for, does the truth spread faster than lies? Does the truth actually stand as a bedrock beneath the lies? Like, do lies just sort of float over the surface and you can just sort of spend time peering down at the truth whenever you feel like it? Turns out not so much. Untruthful news, so things that are presented as news, it's 70% more likely to be retweeted on Twitter, and that's according to their research, and that's not bots. They actually spent time in this research to make sure it wasn't bots spreading Russian fake stuff. They actually analyzed the stories that were verified as true or false by fact-checking organizations like Snopes. And they found out that of any type, whether it's from any party, fake political news from any party spreads quicker than any kind, like news about disasters, terrorism, events from like 2012 to 2016, the presidential elections. Basically, if you look at it as a tree spreading its roots, lies go deeper, they spread faster, and they are more shareable than the truth.
So is this moral outrage too?
Yes.
And just plain more interesting.
It has a little bit of moral outrage. If you are on Facebook almost being radicalized, like if you are in that sort of like upward graph we talked about near the beginning, you're more likely to be spending time sharing this stuff. But really, the thing that surprised me, they looked at it was 126,000 stories they were tracking, and like 3 million people, spreading it more than 4.5 million times. So like it was a huge data set. They found that the things that spread quickly, for instance, if they shared something true, like a verifiably true fact by one of our big companies here, they spread to maybe 1,000 people. It rarely spreads beyond 1,000. So like maybe in the top, a couple truthful facts that are interesting for the day, 1,000 people might pick it up. The top 1% of false news, so verifiably false, would spread to 100,000 people.
Oh shit!
So
that's not even close.
Times, yeah, 100 times more likely to be shared. And it wasn't just about grudges. The people who were researching this. This is a co-author, Sanan Aral. He's a professional management at Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He said this about the study, quote, "Novel information is thought to be more valuable than redundant information. People who spread novel information gain social status because they're thought to be in the know and have inside information."
Social grooming. To simplify this, is this a high school rumor that starts that everyone knows about, but no one knows who the valedictorian is?
Exactly. If I tell you, Jessie Becker is the valedictorian. Oh, and also she secretly has an eating disorder. One of those things is interesting.
The latter, not the 4.0, but the...
Right. Yeah, one of those things is considered to be novel or new information, and one of those things is something only somebody who has a high social status and is in the know would have access to.
But it doesn't have to be true.
It does not have to be true.
Now, Joe, you know what a huge American history nut I am. I love American history, but there's one part of world history that I really love, and it's the Roman times.
Okay, I'm in.
And my favorite stories are the gluttony stories, where these kings, queens, princes, princess have these huge tables. You've seen them in every single movie, right?
Oh, we're talking like Caligula and things like that.
And they drink and party so much, have sex with everybody, including their family members. But the thing is, where they'd eat so much that they'd glow and they'd vomit and they'd eat some more. They'd purposely vomit so they could enjoy more pleasure, dopamine from eating.
Right. There are myths about vomitoriums, rooms that are specifically for that. Vomitoriums were not actually where people would do that, but people would party until they vomited frequently. So that's not necessarily a myth.
One of the indentured servants or slaves has to come clean it up, right?
Right. Oh,
The worst job. But it's changed. Gluttony's changed through the years. Eating has become a very big thing in this country. Drugs and alcohol. Even I've had a few friends that have really had a problem with this. Addicted to video games. Staying up which you and I have done at times, right?
Absolutely. I don't want to admit how many hours I've put into Fallout 4.
And I've done enough drugs to probably kill about 5 or 6 people. Now, a lot of people, the average American, now I bring this up to people who watch TV live, so the average American, as of today, and this is probably a little outdated information, watches about 4.5 hours a day.
Okay, that's considerable.
And that's on the way up with Netflix, Hulu, different platforms. And some of my friends will brag, I don't even have a TV. These same people, Joe, are on the internet all day long.
Right. We when we think about having a TV and glutting ourselves on TV, we're imagining big screen, sitcoms, things like that. We're not taking into account Facebook and Hulu.
So it's realistic that people are spending what? Half of their day on a screen. It's gotta cause anxiety, right, Joe?
Right. I see what you're going with this. So there's no Roman slave to come mop up our Facebook and Hulu addiction. This is just
gluttony.
on us.
If they saw us today, they would be judging us going, what the hell are you guys doing?
Right. They're like, at least we're eating something. I know that it's weird to have to get a dopamine fix after your dopamine fix. Like, you would think that if Facebook is the relaxation or social media is the relaxation event, why are people from Cognizant having to go have sex in the nursing mother's room? Or why are they having to cry on the outside floor? Or why are they having to seek counselors? Why do they need a dopamine break after what effectively, they're seeing our entertainment?
Yeah, things that people usually want to see. I think it's they're just trying to get that dopamine. They have to get the stress off of them. So that would be the crying, the shaking, the nervous breakdowns. And the sex stuff is just crazy. Putting it in my head, I'm thinking, well, maybe they're watching too much pornography. And
right.
Getting everyone in the mood.
Yeah, we referenced the murders and the deaths in the opening of this episode, but the thing they kept talking about in Cognizant is that there's so much nudity that at some point it's not watching nudity for fun. It's just they're just seeing skin all the time, and it loses its dopamine. It's not titillating anymore.
No, it's just turning these people into animals, and they're just filled to the brim with just toxic stuff.
Have you ever had that filled up to the brim feeling on social media? Have you ever had to well, first off, I guess, have you ever been addicted to social media, and have you ever had to do that walk away moment?
I have, and it's been sadly about looking up exes and looking up who they're doing. It sounds kind of stalkerish, because it probably is, but just looking at all the fun they're having with their new boyfriend.
Right. I joked about it looking like a yogurt commercial, but it's more like an antidepressant commercial, like the after of they're riding a 2-person bicycle and they're with their boyfriend. And
then you look up their friends and their family. It's like, what are you doing? And
everyone's in a sun hat.
And I don't think I'd leave because of I'm doing the wrong thing. I just can't take anymore.
Right.
What about you? Have you ever?
I apologize to anyone who goes to my Facebook these days. I have not checked Facebook in about 3 months. I had to quit for different reasons. You quit because you were looking at other people's lives and feeling inadequate, which is, I've read a lot of articles that talk about exactly that being the perfect reason to leave. I was watching a clip of Dead Poets Society, the Robin Williams movie.
Great movie.
Great movie. Good message is we should, all take literacy into account and read classics and enjoy ourselves. My problem is that I have a great big old chip on my shoulder because I come from a family that could not afford an education. And very clearly I love to study. So that has always hurt a little bit. Watching these kids, going back as an adult and seeing clips of Dead Poets Society that somebody had linked me on Facebook. They're like, hey, you're a writer. You should appreciate this. And I got mad because I saw all these kids who were in a prep school and their dads are all doctors in this movie. They're all overbearing fathers who are get an education, stop reading poets.
Get a 4.0 to get into Princeton like the rest of the family did.
Right, but I found myself getting angrier and angrier because I'm yeah, but if they don't read, if they don't read T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, who gives a shit? They're gonna be doctors. They can pick that up later.
Well, and I don't understand that too. My own jealousy too. It seems to, because I'm on now promoting the show. I'm on there every day, and we have a lot of people on Facebook that listen to Re-Engineer You, share us, like our episodes. We get a lot of love on there, but for some reason I get jealous of these people with these picturesque lives. If they have cute kids, I get jealous that I don't have a family.
Right.
If they're on vacation, I'm thinking, well, why am I at work every day when these people are going living their dreams? I see their cars, their houses are getting remodeled. So I think, what, Joe? They have more money than me.
Right.
They're more successful. Here's proof of it. And sometimes they're political rants. Joe and I are not political. We're about the most unpolitical people. I get upset and I get pissed off at my friends that don't support my sports teams.
Right.
So just misery, 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 jealousy, jealousy, jealousy.
It is a little funny to me that it wasn't the violence, nudity, or just crazy political stuff that drove us off. It was inadequacy. we took it right in the self-esteem like most people. We're gonna get into part 2. In part 2 of our show, we talk about what that does to you psychologically. So we will get to that. But I think it's funny that Todd and I both had to walk away for the same reason.
You've been listening to The Re-Engineered You. Thank you so much for listening to the show. You mean the world to us. We hope you'll join us next week for part 2 of our exploration of screen anxiety. In part 2, we'll examine what screen addiction is costing us on a personal level, and we'll look at potential solutions.